Hello, this is Jasper Gregory. Welcome to part two of A Genealogy of Social Justice. Today I will be talking to you about someone that George Lukács, calls the Pre-Fascists, or Romantic Anti-Capitalists. And so this is in this period, 1900 to 1910. Basically, you get a big crisis, big financial crisis, I think 1907. 1907 crisis. And then you get World War II, which is, when does that start? Oh, I'm sorry, is it 1912? So you have this period when I took some notes. You have this period when, first you had a romantic generation. And you can say that they're the holdovers from the entire century before. They're the holdovers from the whole liberal revolution century that kind of got started off. It's the 1800s. Got started off with the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and then Europe was rocked in this period, and Germany was very important. It was the country of denkers and dichters in Dutch. It's poets and thinkers. They were experimenting with the first research universities. A lot of this is coming out of Prussia. They're kind of future. They have a welfare state. They've got the research universities set up, and the kind of people, the grad students, the thinkers that came out of here, filtered into these liberal revolutions in, all through Europe. In 1848, you had all through Europe. You had, let me go back to the other one. So all through Europe in 1848, you had an entire period, you had revolutions all across Europe. It was really crazy. The revulsions, whatever. So Germany almost had a revolution. I believe France had another one. They'd been having revolutions back and forth. But you had a very radical period in Russia, which was interesting. They were just kind of waking up, and you had this first hipster revolution. Hipster revolutionaries, they were all Hegelians. So Hegel was coming out of the German research universities. You had this romantic Mussorgsky, if you know who that is. He's a composer. And, look into his life, and he lived in a commune in St. Petersburg. All of these artists, and they were dreaming of being peasants, right? So Dostoevsky's also from that period. He was part of these revolutions. He wrote about them, which is why his books become so important. But the thing that's, so you have these revolutions. They're very important. They get put down in Italy and Germany, and those radicals go to America for the 1850s, German and Italian. And you had some others too. Some of them stayed. But the Italians kind of went back for the revolutions again. I think they were successful about 10 years later, let's say 1860s. A lot of the Germans stayed. It took a lot longer. But they had a very interesting role in fomenting violence in the American Civil War, for taking the radical abolitionist cause that was taking the spirit of 1848, the People's Revolutions, and importing it into America. Refugees, political refugees, if there are enough of them, they can really influence the culture. You can see the same thing with the Eastern Europeans bringing in the Russian, so that after 1848, you had this whole Russian period. You had anarchism coming out of there. You had these kind of super radical Hegelians, these super radical revolutionaries. The entire class of aristocrats became the first, and so you see this word intelligentsia. Yeah, I'm sorry, intelligentsia. Oh, yeah. These were the first people that are identified in that way, right? This word was made for them. It was actually made for Polish people, I forget what it was, intelligentski or something, intelligentsi. Just a little bit earlier in Poland, and then in Russia, you had this entire class, and they were all dreaming about being peasants. They started wearing growing out their beards. So instead of being these modern Western oriented people, they dreamed of being peasants and having the peasants, the consciousness. So it was this Romanticism. It was very deeply romantic about the Volk, the people. And this stuff kind of determined that entire period. So between the 1850s and World War One, you had these romantic revolutionary types. So let's go back to the other slide. Sorry. So these are these guys here, the Romantic Russianists. So in the West, you had, Lukács talks about it. So he was in Hungary and in Budapest. And so in this period, 1890s, 1900s, they are dreaming of this kind of spiritual revival coming out of, they're Eurasianists, actually. They're reading Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. They're dreaming about being there. They're dreaming about the people and this super romantic left revolutionism. So Lukács was reading Sorel, so they're really getting into, how do we create violence? How do we use violence for a revolution? So it's this kind of Russian dream. And so now you have another, that you have these futurists that came up. So think right around, so when the generation shift was right at World War One. So let's just say right around 1910, you have this new group, and they're still, I'm calling them romantic collectivists, both of these. They're still romantic, but they start to romanticize the future instead of the past. So instead of this Russian, we'll all go back to wearing sandals and bear coats and, being these romantic medieval times, instead of this, we'll look into the future and we'll have this romantic notion of what the future is going to look like. So this is another word from here, moderns. This is a neologism. It was, invented. It's people that are really into the future, kind of, or, into this era when everything's changing. So they're looking to America. They were looking to kind of the robber barons as this, great figure, the titan of industry. Chicago was building skyscrapers, and that really got people excited, about, they figured out elevators so that you could start to build into the sky. It was this idea of going to the moon, this idea of colonizing the world and this beautiful future. So that, what's really kind of interesting is these, futurists, Italy, Russia, The group in Budapest kind of sounds like that. That the thing that's interesting is they were inspired by these American idealists that they're misnamed the pragmatists. But so William James is a psychologist. John Dewey kind of did everything. He was an all-round huge public intellectual, had a huge influence. They were taking this thing. I guess I can take notes here. Kantian idealism. So this group, it was these first research universities that are coming out of Germany. So you see how it ties in. They were kind of inventing, or these intellectuals are using cultural relativism, relativism. Relativism. What, God, man. Oh, okay. I thought I could just do that. So you've got this relativism that's coming out of, Chicago is kind of the boom town. I'm gonna say starting in the 1890s, maybe a little earlier. We should be looking at the skyscrapers are going up. The University of Chicago was inventing the American Research University, and it was this super relativist. So you had symbolic interactionism is the sociology that comes out of there, and they kind of say, oh, everything's constructed. So this hard social constructivism is coming out of these guys. So let's say I said, William James wrote, what is it? The Varieties of Religious Experience or something. You have John Dewey was very important in this period. I don't know all the names of the people at the University of Chicago, but they went for this complete relativism, and then they pushed this progressive politics that were coming out of there. But the thing that's funny with these futurists so one of the guys that was one of the futurists was Mussolini in Italy. So just kind of funny thinking of him reading William James' Varieties of Religious Experience and all this woo kind of idea of cultural relativism, and what is it that is through action. So this whole thing with William James is you kind of the meaning, truth is created through interaction with the world, through action. So you got these futurists, these Americanophiles, they invent a new neologism, which, didn't I write this down? Oh yeah, this word, activist, is from this period. So we're kind of used to it. It's become a background word and we don't even look at it. But at one point that was a radical word, activist, and it was using this kind of social constructivism to remake the world, through action. So we're not going to talk about it, we're not going to think about it, we're just going to act. They were reading Sorel. Sorel was very influenced by William James and these goddamn American constructivists. And you also have to think that this idealism and this cultural relativism is coming from an earlier generation in America called the Transcendentalists. Let's save that for another episode. But Walt Whitman is, so Walt Whitman is the poet that comes out of here. So you've got these young pre-fascists, these futures reading Walt Whitman, and that was that irrationalism, which is going to result in their coups and taking over, rejecting liberalism and capitalism and trying to create new experiments. So I wrote, I don't think people really understand the extent to which these kids were all accelerationist. So that that's kind of a new word that has something to do with Nick Land, um, of people that want to see capitalism push past its limits. Kind of Marxist idea. And you accelerate capitalism. You accelerate technological growth. Well, the moderns, that's what they were doing. They were accelerating modernity, this skyscraper culture. And World War One had this huge, it pushed this people is through the war economy. They totally restructured their societies from top down, and they wanted more of that. They just wanted to push it. They're all reading Nietzsche. Nietzsche's really big in this period, and the Übermensch. So this idea of becoming a Superman. As they're reading Walt Whitman and Nietzsche and dreaming of changing the future and of action. So that's why they're the activists. They're creating a lot of interesting art. I love the art from these people. Right? I'm sorry, but they're pre-fascists. They first the Mussolini's revolution in 1918. Am I right there? 1919. And then the Germans, Junger and all of these guys, they're called the German conservatives. The young conservatives is a word for them. So the young conservatives are also going in this direction, this irrationalism and dreaming of stopping the desecularization, or the it's like the magic is going away, the romantic magic is going away, modernity is coming, and it's making everything boring and vapid, and we have to have this huge effort of the will. The will to power or action, or it's from these damn American transcendentalists, and we're going to reshape the world. So that's that again, the Nazi Revolution. The first in the 1920s, it was the Young Conservatives, and then it kind of morphed into the Nazi Revolution, not one for one. Okay. So that was fun. It started off a little slow. Just I'm not editing these, so sorry. They're live. They're live performance pieces. But as long as I'm fast enough, I don't think you'll get too bored. So bye bye. See you next time.